When we get to Fiji, don't drink the water. Oh, sorry, one sec. Sorry, where was I? Yeah, just as a reminder, when we're in Fiji, please don't drink the water. It's important. It's best not to drink the water in Fiji. Earth's finest water, but please don't drink it. It might not be safe to drink. Though the chances are, whether you've been to Fiji before or not, you already have drunk their water. Because Fijian water is sold in little squared off plastic bottles all over the States. In fact, 30% of America's bottled water comes from Fiji. It's the number one source of water sold in the US, and 2 in every 3 Americans prefers bottled water to tap water. So do Fijians, because Fiji's water might not be safe to drink. 10 years ago, over half of the population of the islands of Fiji didn't have access to clean, safe drinking water. Thankfully, that number is now down to 12%, but that's still a lot of people. Just shy of 1 million people live in Fiji. That's 120,000 people who don't have access to safe drinking water. That's roughly the same number of people as the population of West Palm Beach, Florida, or Santa Clara, California. That's a lot of people who are at risk of typhoid fever, diarrhea, hepatitis A, gastroenteritis, just from quenching their thirst in the heat of a Fijian day. Water that Americans, and to a lesser extent Europeans, are willing to pay $3 for 330 millilitres. Today we're going to discover what a wonderful place Fiji is. We'll start with Earth's finest water, then we'll talk about the real situation on the ground and an ingenious solution that's currently being tested here. And after that, we'll go back in time to gain an overview of Fijian history, and we'll round out the talk with a look ahead at our ports of call in Fiji. So back to that water. America's favourite bottled water, the bottled water of presidents of all stripes, the bottled water of movie stars and pop sensations, the bottled water that found its way into almost every red carpet photograph at the 2019 Golden Globe Awards. This elite water, with the taglines Earth's finest water and untouched by man, is truly, authentically, Fijian. It's sourced from an ancient artesian aquifer deep within the volcanic layers of Fiji's rocky foundations. The water from volcanic mountain streams, and even more so water runoff, is caught by the island's lush vegetation, channeled down verdant green leaves, down branches, down bold tree trunks, down into the undergrowth where an incredible diversity of shrubs and trees, plants and mushrooms drink in the water's natural goodness. What's left by the thirsty forests seeps deeper into the soil through layers of volcanic rock, picking up mineral content as it filters through millennia of volcanic eruptions, until it collects deep underground in cavernous caves, pools of delicious, perfectly prepared, drinkable water, protected from external elements, and just waiting to be enjoyed in a Chinese recycled plastic bottle. The water is naturally 7.7 on the pH scale, which is considered to be perfect for human consumption, and the taste is sweet, soft, and smooth, according to the company that markets it. Whether it tastes like paradise in liquid form or just water is somewhat irrelevant. Whether it's marketing genius and expert product placement or a truly top-tier product, Fiji Water ranks number 1 for bottled water in America for every age group except baby boomers. The Fiji Water Company has been tapping this ancient aquifer for 30 years. It was first set up by Canadian entrepreneur David Gilmore, who had fallen in love with the islands and bought a large amount of land here for different purposes. He bought a resort in addition to creating this water company, and both have served him very well. In 2004, Gilmore sold his water company, Natural Waters of Fiji Limited, to Californian business magnates Linda and Stuart Resnick. The Resnicks are massive in the bottled drink sector, with water, fruit juices, wines, all part of their portfolio. It's not been entirely uncontroversial. At first, the company paid no tax to the Fijian government for the water it extracted. When the government implemented taxes, Fiji Water sacked all of its staff in protest. But when the government responded by saying that they'd just seize the water rights and redistribute them, everyone got their jobs back. Fiji Water started paying 15 cents tax per litre, and everyone moved on. From a business standpoint, the Resnicks have taken Fiji Water from strength to strength. In 2022, Fiji Water's revenue hit $43 million. $43 million for water. Water. That stuff that covers 71% of the Earth's surface. The stuff that's more plentiful than anything else on Earth. Except maybe air. But actually, only 3% of the Earth's water is freshwater. The rest is salty seawater, which is undrinkable. And due to accessibility restrictions and surface pollution, only 0.4% of the globe's total water supply is actually drinkable. Some of that 0.4% is gathered under the islands of Fiji. And when packaged up in a square plastic bottle, it brings in $43 million a year. Fiji Water, the company, has sold a vision of paradise, all in the very simple form of water in an eye-catching square bottle decorated with a single pink hibiscus flower set against a heavenly blue. And in less than 3 decades, actually surprisingly quickly in Fiji Water's story, water eclipsed all pre-existing industries on the islands of Fiji and became the country's #1 export by a country mile. In 2021, water accounted for a quarter of all exports by revenue heading out of Fiji to the rest of the world. To put that into perspective, water represented 24% of total exports. The next largest export in economic terms was fuel wood, which only accounted for 6.8% of total export revenue. Fiji's top exports beyond water are fuel wood at 6.8%, gold at 5.9%, raw sugar 4.8%, refined petroleum 4.6%, and processed fish 4.3%. Before David Gilmour turned up and drove a tap into Viti Levu's volcanic bottle top, the economy of Fiji looked very different. So, the USA falls in love with the taste of volcanic filtration from 5,558 miles away. But I mentioned at the beginning that 12% of Fijians still don't, to this day, have access to clean and safe drinking water. So what's that all about? Well, water pollution can come from many sources. Over the past decade, the Fijian government has been working to replace rusted pipes to keep the supply running to people's taps clean. But some water issues come from the water source itself and surface pollution, rather than the pipes that are used to transport it from pump to home. And researchers at the University of Palermo in Italy have stumbled upon an ingenious way of enhancing the quality of water for Fiji's population. And it's entirely natural. The team, led by ecologist Fortunato Asciotti, think that they can reduce the global cases of gastroenteritis by up to 24 million cases a year. They think they can save us a collective $74 million in healthcare bills associated with waterborne diseases. How? With seagrass. Seagrass has been around since the dinosaurs roamed Earth, and they are the colloquial term for 4 groups of flowering underwater plants, collectively known As seagrass, they are the only known flowering plants that can live underwater. Prawns and coastal fish love living among the tall, swaying leaves of the seagrass, while green turtles find the leaves of this submarine plant simply to die for. Delicious. At best estimates, 400 square meters of seagrass can support 2,000 tons of fish a year. But it's not just sea life that should love seagrass. We should love it too. Because Fortunato Asciotti and his team have discovered that seagrass naturally reduces water pollution and waterborne disease. And it's especially effective at cleaning up coastal water, which is perfect for island nations like Fiji, who find themselves, quite unsurprisingly, surrounded by coastal water. Seagrass absorbs nutrients from coastal runoff and helps stabilize sediment, which helps to keep the close to shore waters, those most dramatically impacted by pollution, clean. Additionally, seagrass meadows can store carbon 35 times faster than rainforests, so it's also a great plant for tackling greenhouse gas emissions. 1 square kilometre of healthy seagrass meadow can absorb 83,000 metric tons of carbon, just shy of the 85,000 metric tons of CO2 produced in the making and distributing of Fiji water every year. So there we have it, a quick splash into Fiji's water story. But let's get out of the water for a moment, dry off, and talk about Fijian society. And this is a bit of a turbulent story. And to be honest, it's one of the most complex and confusing of all the South Pacific island groups. You see, a lot of the Fijian story has been lost to the annals of time because the people who could have shared the stories with the next generations were, well, they were eaten. For a long time, visitors were wary of popping into Fiji because they'd heard that the locals had developed a taste for humans. For a while, Fiji was known as the Cannibal Isles. The Republic of Fiji, as it's now known, is a collection of more than 330 islands and 500 islets in the South Pacific. It's about 1,100 nautical miles north-northeast of New Zealand, and 926,000 people call Fiji home. Most of them, and I really mean most of them, 87%, live on one of the 2 main islands, Viti Levu and Vanua Levu. And these islands have existed somewhere around 150 million years, so they've seen a thing or two. The first known human population of Fiji arrived around 4,000 years ago. According to local legend, it was the great chief Lutuna Soba who led his people across the seas to settle here, predominantly from Southeast Asia. And the rest of the world didn't even know Fiji was here. Until the 17th century when Abel Tasman, the Dutch explorer, accidentally sighted these islands. From that moment, Europeans started making a habit of stumbling upon these islands. And that's when the rumours started. A lot of rumours. Though there was certainly some truth in there too. There is plenty of evidence of cannibalism in Fiji, just maybe not quite to the rampant extent that European explorers seem to assume. And it's from this period of European exploration in the Pacific that Fiji gets its modern name, from a mishearing of a mispronunciation of a Tongan explaining to an Englishman what the island he'd just sailed past was called. The island was Viti Levu. The locals called their homeland Viti, but in Tongan that became Fisi. And hearing the Tongan accent through British ears, the now world-famous Captain James Cook recorded the island's name as Fiji, and it stuck. More comprehensive charts of the Fijian islands were contributed by Captain William Bligh, who sailed through Fiji after the mutiny on the Bounty, and the strait between the 2 main islands continues to be called Bligh Water. Actually, for a short period of time, the islands were called the Bligh Islands. But while Europeans did a few sail-bys, no one was particularly motivated to stay. And that's because of the island's reputation for cannibalism. Everyone thought the islands looked lovely and all that, but not worth the sacrifice, if you catch my drift. Sailors' diaries include references to freshly killed corpses piled up for eating, and observations of ceremonial human sacrifices at the inauguration of new buildings. And can you imagine a town mayor unveiling a plaque at a new children's hospital and saying, but for first, I'd just like to make a little sacrifice of Fred over here for the blessing of this new hospital. But while it is true that cannibalism did play a part in native society here, actually, it seems that European accounts may have overplayed how commonplace it was. But anyway, Europeans weren't all that keen to find out firsthand. So the first Europeans to live among the locals in Fiji didn't come here as colonizers. They were victims of shipwrecks. And they became known as the beachcombers because they would scour the beaches for things to eat and survive. Believe me, you didn't want to be a beachcomber in 17th century Fiji. You didn't tend to last very long. Beachcombers were mainly deserters, shipwrecked crew, or escaped convicts from the British penal colonies in Australia. If they weren't eaten, they either laid low or attempted to join tribal society by providing assistance to the chiefs, typically in the form of weapons looted from the wrecked ship that landed them on the islands. Charles Savage was an especially notorious beachcomber, and he lived up to his name. He became stranded after his ship, Eliza, was wrecked off the coast in 1808. Savvy guy, collected up as much ammunition as he could from the ship and helped Bao become one of the most powerful chiefs in the history of Fiji. And he was rewarded, of course, with many wives and a privileged position in society. But even this most canny of beachcombers only survived 5 years before he was killed in battle and eaten. As a mark of respect, his skull was preserved as a carver bowl. An honor indeed. Anyway, to abridge what is a very turbulent and complex history of tribal warfare, let's just say that the Bao clan maintained something of a position of control over the islands, but things then got a little out of hand. And the ruling chief, Kakobau, titled by foreigners as the King of Fiji, found himself in a huge amount of debt. You see, in 1849, there was a large fire that destroyed the home of an American missionary by the name of John Brown Williams. And Williams held Kakobau as the King of Fiji responsible for the damages, and he sent him quite a substantial damages bill. Well, as any lawyer knows, this set a precedent that Kakobau rather wished he hadn't set, and suddenly the amount of debt he owed to American missionaries ballooned to $45,000, and he couldn't afford it. So enter Queen Victoria in the form of J.B. Thurston. It was 1873 by this point, and Kakobau could see his kingdom was in a very precarious position. Considering his options, he knew he wasn't going to stay in control for long, and so he requested Thurston to petition the British government to annex Fiji. Britain had already declined this kind offer once, but on October the 10th, 1874, Fiji was indeed declared a British Crown colony. Over the years of British rule, the colonial government sought to increase industry on the island for the financial enrichment of the empire. In Fiji, this was in the form of sugar plantations. However, and this is quite different from other British colonies, and demonstrates some sort of deference or respect for Fijians that wasn't apparent elsewhere. British rule protected native Fijian land and made it illegal for land to be sold to foreigners. And because of this policy, even though Fiji experienced almost 100 years as a British colony, 83% of the land in Fiji is still owned by native communities. And how could the British masters expect the native Fijians to work as labourers on British plantations on their own territory? That would just feel wrong. And the British racked their brains to come up with a solution. And the solution came in the form of Indian labourers, because the British Empire didn't treat all subjects equally. thousands of Indians, which was also at the time part of the British Empire, were shipped to work on the plantations that the British had decided would be inappropriate for the Fijians to work. I have no idea if they could see their own blatant double standards, but between 1879 to 1916, a total of 60,537 people were relocated from India to Fiji, and this can still be seen in the demographic makeup of society today. Fiji became independent of Britain on October the 10th, 1970, 96 years to the day since Britain took control of the islands to clear the former king's debts. Fiji is now a republic, though the national motto remains fear God and honour the king. I'm just not sure which king. Okay, so as we get towards the end of this presentation, we're going to look at Suva, Lautoka, Dravuni Island, and Savu Savu. Suva, the capital of Fiji, has been dubbed by some the New York of the Pacific, thanks to the large diversity of communities that call it home. Indigenous Fijians, Indo-Fijians, Chinese, Europeans, and other South Pacific Islanders all call this place home. And it's a major city in the region, having hosted the first Pacific Games in 1963 and again in 1979 and 2003, making it the only city to host the regional athletics tournament 3 times. Well, here are my top tips for Suva. If you're interested to find out more about the history of the nation, through its turbulent twists and turns into what is now considered one of the friendliest nations on Earth, then head to the Fiji Museum. Set in the Victorian-era Thurston Gardens, you'll see traditional canoes, war clubs, tattooing tools, and pick up a whole load of information. And then enjoy a stroll in the beautiful Victorian gardens afterwards. Actually, there are a few parks in Suva that you might enjoy. Another one is Albert Park, which is one of the most beautiful places in the city, and named after Queen Victoria's husband and consort, Prince Albert. If you get chatting with any of the locals in the park, ask them if any aeroplanes have landed there recently. If you're in the mood for shopping, then you've got great options in Suva with the Municipal Handicraft Centre for market-style shopping, and Cumin Street, which is the main shopping street of the city. A little bit further out of town, plenty to see and do out in nature. So if that calls your name, look up the Sigatoka Sand Dunes or the Koloi Suva National Park, which is about a 10 to 15 minute drive from the ship. Plenty of hiking trails, 2 waterfalls, you can also go swimming there. Beautiful. Looking ahead at Lautoka. Now, Lautoka is a smaller city on the northwest coast of that island, about half the population of Suva. It's situated on the dry side of the island, so hopefully that means a dry day without any rain, but don't hold me to that. This is a key location for Fiji's sugar plantations, which still contribute to Fiji's economy. Lautoka is Fiji's primary sugar exporting port, so please don't be concerned if you ever see me licking any puddles like an excited puppy. Lautoka has fewer city highlights than Suva, as it receives far fewer tourists than the capital, despite being the second largest city on the island. But that means it's also a great opportunity to experience Fiji like a local. Head to Lautoka Market, where you'll find so much fresh tropical fruit and veg. The market's open from 7 a.m. till 5. But remember, if you're looking to buy, the best stuff always goes first at the market. There's a small botanical garden in town too, where there are usual colourful orchids and other tropical flowers in bloom. It's not big, but it is pretty. Or head out of town to see an authentic traditional village in the Koreyanitu National Heritage Park. Abaka Village in the Heritage Park is home to friendly villagers who've got maps of the surrounding area and are happy to give you a guided tour as well if you'd like, and that's about 10 miles from the port. But for me, the main highlight of town, on the corner of Navos Road and Vetari Street, not that the road names are particularly important, any local can point you in the right direction, is the Lautoka Sugar Mill. It's one of the oldest and largest sugar mills in the South Pacific, and it's so interesting to see the industry behind those glistening white crystals that the whole world has become somewhat addicted to. There are no official tours, and the factory is seasonal, so may not be up and running, but you can still see all of the machinery as you take a walk around the perimeter. Really interesting stuff. Oh, and if you're looking for a beach day on the island of Viti Levu, choose Lautoka. Suva really doesn't have great beach spots nearby, but Lautoka, on what Fijians call their sun coast, does. But if you're really looking for a good beach day, then Dravuni Island has a spot of sand with your name on it. Dravuni Island is part of the Kadavu group, with the absolutely quintessential Fijian sails brochure beaches. With a coastline decorated with vibrant coral reefs, this small island, home to only about 125 people and less than 1.5 miles long, is the sort of place that people have in mind when they imagine Fiji, but not so many people actually find it. Whether you go for a hike inland to the island's peak for gorgeous views of the surrounding islands, or just head straight for the water for a snorkel around the Great Astrolabe Reef, the fourth largest coral reef in the world, Dravuni Island is an unforgettable gem of nature. The Great Astrolabe Reef, which takes its name from the French exploration ship that charted it, is a breeding ground for many large marlin, sharks, tuna, mahi-mahi, snapper. And given its great variety of deep channels and shallow lagoons, there's something for all abilities and exploration styles here. The snorkeling is top-notch. Back on land, there's a small community on the island, and so for a cultural experience, spend some time in one of the 2 villages where you can interact with authentic Fijian island life, treat yourself to a handmade craft keepsake, and indulge in delicious fresh tropical fruits and coconut water prepared by the locals. While there are free-to-use public toilets, don't expect modern facilities like restaurants, ATMs, or Wi-Fi. This is an island to switch off from all those unnecessary distractions and enjoy an essence of Eden. Beautiful. And with paradise on our minds, our final Fijian port of call, Savu Savu, is often dubbed the hidden paradise of Fiji. Found on the southern shores of Fiji's northern island, Vanuatu, this charming town presents a unique blend of natural beauty, cultural richness, and adventure. For the water babies, Savu Savu Bay is a top choice for swimming, snorkeling, and diving. It's home to a stunning array of marine life and thriving coral reefs. Or, across the water, centered around the small island of Namena, about 15.5 miles boat ride from Savu Savu, is the Namena Marine Reserve. Another fantastic option for divers, especially if you want to see schools of hammerhead sharks in their natural environment. This protected marine park offers some of the most spectacular diving and snorkeling in the region, with the barrier reef around Namena home to thousands of fish and invertebrates, hundreds of coral species, and, if you're lucky, you'll see some endangered sea turtles swimming around too, as the island's beaches are a popular nesting spot. If you prefer to look at water but not get too wet, then take a ride to nearby Vuadomo village, about 19 miles from Savu Savu, and you'll be able to take a short hike from there to the waterfall of the same name, Vuadomo Waterfall. If you're heading out of the village, it's a good idea to follow local custom and present a Savu Savu, which is a tradition of gift giving when you arrive in a village. And if you do like getting wet, then wear your swimmers, because you can cool off in the pool at the base of the waterfall. Actually, Vanuatu's waterfalls are all pretty remarkable, as fast-flowing rivers charge through the island's volcanic mountainous terrain. For a towering torrent of white water, drive about 20 minutes to Nakawaga. 5 minutes walk along a jungle trail leads you directly to the towering waterfall, and again, you can swim in the natural pool at the waterfall's base. Staying in Savu Savu, there's a bustling local market where you can pick up exotic fruits as well as traditional Fijian items and handicrafts. The Flora Tropica Gardens are botanical gardens featuring a wide variety of tropical plants and orchids, not to mention the magnificent collection of palm species, which stands at over 250 different varietals of palm, including many rare and endangered species you might not see again. And here's an interesting local food tip. Head to the Nakama hot springs, where the water is naturally heated to almost 100 degrees Celsius. That's 212 degrees Fahrenheit by geothermal energy bubbling furiously below. Unlike the slightly cooler Savu Savu hot springs, which the locals love to bathe in, you'll be unsurprised to hear that nobody tends to take a relaxing soak in the near boiling Nakama hot springs. Instead, locals use the naturally steaming water to cook traditional dishes. Fiji is one of those places that has achieved a total rebranding, and for the better. 17th century Europeans described Fijians as formidable warriors and ferocious cannibals, builders of the finest vessels in the Pacific, but not great sailors. And that's a perfect analogy. Builders of the finest vessels in the Pacific, but not great sailors. Home to Earth's finest water, yet 12% of the Fijian population can't turn on their tap without risk of disease. Fiji is paradise on Earth, and yet many of the locals don't know it. So how come the rest of us do? Well, the answer, as crazy as this may sound, has been right there in your hands. It's been on the tip of your tongue. It is the water. Fiji water. The thing that accounts for a quarter of all exports. The thing that totally transformed the Fijian economy. Because there's only one thing that brings in more money to Fiji's coffers than water. And that's tourism. Fiji Water introduced the idyllic dream of Fiji as paradise on Earth in 1996. 1996 was the turning point, when the essence of paradise was embodied in an elite bottle of water. Earth's finest water, to be sipped by anyone who's anyone. In 1995, Fiji's tourism revenues totaled $369 million US. At their peak in 2018, annual tourist spend in Fiji broke the 1 billion barrier. Now you might say, yeah, that's fine, inflation. Or more people are travelling. And you'd be right. But I can't help but feel that a little bit of that boost, maybe more than a little, has been that sip and savour of America's favourite bottled water, and the desire to experience what that represents in real life. It's a masterpiece in branding, and it's a big reputation to live up to. Enjoy getting to know Earth's finest.